October 1939, Cullowhee, North Carolina. A construction crew is digging out the basement of a new building going up on a small mountain campus, what's known today as Western Carolina University. Their shovels hit something that isn't dirt and isn't bedrock. It's open space, a passage cut low and narrow running back into the hillside. They weren't the first to see one. A decade earlier, schoolboys from the nearby Speedwell community had already been crawling into similar tunnels on Cullowhee Mountain half a mile away. Their fathers had heard about them even before that, and later reporting on the building's history noted that human remains had also turned up nearby, tied to the removal of an old Cherokee mound that had stood on that same ground. The kind of discovery that would trigger federal protection laws today, but back then barely made it into anyone's notes. No headline ran. No one called Washington. The crew kept digging. The building went up. And by the time anyone outside Jackson County thought to ask questions, most of the witnesses were already old men describing something from their childhood. This is a true story. It's also, by design, an unfinished one, and the reason it's unfinished is the actual subject of this video. Stick with me, because we're not doing the version of this where one elder breaks a 100-year vow of silence in some specific year and reveals a hidden underground civilization. That makes a great thumbnail. It is not, as far as any documented record shows, what actually happened. What did happen is more interesting if you give it the time. A documented multi-decade pattern of tunnel sightings on one specific mountain. A 100-year-old written record from a federal ethnologist who actually lived among the Cherokee and wrote down what their oral tradition said. A real and far older legend about underground spirit people called the Nunnehi, and a genuinely brutal historical turning point in 1907 that had nothing to do with tunnels at all, but everything to do with why Cherokee communities had every reason to stop handing their stories to strangers. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what's documented, what's legend, and where the line actually sits. That line is more interesting than the myth. To understand any of this, you need the real geography, not the postcard version. The Cherokee called this range Shakonohi, usually written Sha-Kono-He, the place of the blue smoke. That's not a poetic nickname added later. It describes a real phenomenon, water vapor exhaled by an unusually dense temperate forest sitting low in the valleys until from a distance it reads as smoke. The English name Smoky Mountains is a direct translation, not an invention. This was the political and spiritual core of the Cherokee Nation for centuries before any European surveyed it. Towns, council houses, sacred sites, and an entire body of oral history were anchored to specific places here, mounds, river bends, particular peaks, the same way a family's history is anchored to a house, except scaled up to a nation and to a far longer memory. Then came removal. In the winter of 1838 into 1839, the United States Army forced an estimated 16,000 Cherokee people out of this homeland and marched them west on what's now called the Trail of Tears. Historians estimate thousands died along the way. But not everyone went. A group of roughly 800 Cherokee, some hidden in remote coves of the Smokies, others protected through the legal maneuvering of a white trader named William Holland Thomas, who had lived among the Cherokee and bought land in his own name on their behalf, stayed in these mountains.
Their descendants are the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, a federally recognized sovereign nation that governs the Qualla boundary to this day, bordering the very national park that now sits on part of their ancestral land. That detail matters more than it sounds like it should. The oral tradition we're about to get into wasn't passed down from a museum placard. It was passed down from inside the same mountains the stories are actually about, through a removal specifically designed to sever exactly that kind of connection. So when you hear that Cherokee elders refused to say something about these mountains, the more useful question isn't what were they hiding, it's who, by the early 1900s, had any right left to simply ask.
So when you hear that Cherokee elders refused to say something about these mountains, the more useful question isn't what were they hiding, it's who, by the early 1900s, had any right left to simply ask. In 1887, a Smithsonian ethnologist named James Mooney moved into Cherokee territory in western North Carolina to do something almost nobody from the federal government had bothered to do up to that point: learn the language, live with the community, and write down what people actually said instead of what outsiders assumed they believed. Over more than a decade, Mooney compiled the material that became Myths of the Cherokee, published by the Bureau of American Ethnology in 1900. It remains today the most cited written source for traditional Cherokee oral history, and it's where the figures at the center of this story first appear in writing. The Nunnehi, sometimes translated as the people who live anywhere, more commonly as the immortals, are described in that tradition as a spirit people who kept townhouses underground, inside specific mountains, and beneath certain rivers across the southern Appalachians. Not gods, not monsters. In the stories Mooney recorded, they were protectors, beings said to guide lost children home, to have fought alongside Cherokee warriors in battle, and to occasionally let a particular person glimpse the entrance to their world, usually as a kindness, never as an open invitation. One place specifically tied to them is Niquosi, an ancient mound that still stands today in Franklin, North Carolina, less than 40 miles from Cullowhee. In the tradition Mooney recorded, when Niquosi's town came under attack, strangers emerged from inside the mound itself, fought off the attackers, and withdrew back into it, as if the hillside had opened and closed around them. Here's the part that's easy to miss if you only want the spooky version. None of this was ever framed inside Cherokee tradition as a secret awaiting exposure. Stories like the Nunnehi were shared the way any culture shares its oral history, selectively, with context, not handed to the first stranger who shows up with a notebook. Mooney earned access over years because he learned the language and stayed. The people who came after him, speculators, treasure hunters, eventually tourists asking where the secret tunnels were, generally hadn't put in that work and generally didn't get the same answers. Which brings us back to that basement in 1939, because the tunnels under Cullowhee Mountain weren't only a campfire story. People kept physically finding them. And one university quietly sealed off an entrance to one of them less than 25 years ago. Decades later, a local historian went looking for confirmation, not in legend but in interviews, later reported by the Silver Herald, Jackson County's local newspaper. A man named Johnny Clayton remembered his own father describing tunnels on Cullowhee Mountain back in the 1920s, before any of this was built. Another witness, identified as Middleton, worked the crew digging out that same basement in the late 1940s and said he saw the tunnels firsthand.
J.E. Wheatley described finding several small tunnel openings while helping lay a sewer line on campus. Two more men, Ralph Hooper and Grady Parker, remembered exploring them as schoolboys, and Parker, who became an excavator by trade, said his own bulldozer once broke straight through into one of them while he was working near a ridge adjoining the present-day campus. That's 5 separate, named witnesses across roughly 3 decades, independently describing the same kind of structure in the same small area. That's not nothing. It's also not proof of an ancient underground city, and to its credit, the most thorough reporting on this never claims it is. What it does establish is that something physical was actually there, hand-cut or naturally hollow passages consistently linked by local people across generations to the same Nunnehi tradition Mooney had already documented decades earlier. What makes the location even less coincidental, that ground sits on top of Cullowhee, Two Sparrows Town, a documented centuries-old Cherokee village site. The university has since built an archaeological curation facility into that same building, formally dedicated in partnership with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, specifically to study this history properly, rather than leave it as a campus legend. And the wall. According to that same reporting, university facilities staff confirmed that a reinforced wall was built in the year 2000, officially, almost certainly for ordinary structural and safety reasons, the same way any institution closes off an unstable crawl space under an 80-year-old building. But there's something almost too fitting about where that wall happens to sit, directly next to the university's own archaeology department. Make of that what you will. This wasn't isolated either. Less than 30 minutes away sits Judaculla Rock, a massive soapstone boulder covered with petroglyphs that have never been fully translated. Cherokee tradition credits the carvings to Judaculla, a giant said to leap between mountain tops, and the Eastern Band's own archaeological checkpoints has been careful on record to frame Judaculla not as a myth nobody's allowed to know, but as a figure of real power the culture still treats with respect. That's a meaningfully different posture than ancient secret nobody's allowed to know. It's closer to, this is sacred, and sacred things aren't owed to whoever shows up asking loudest. So the tunnels are real enough that 5 named people decades apart watched them get physically dug into, with nobody coordinating a hoax. The tradition behind them is documented in writing since 1900. So where does 1907 actually fit into any of this? This is the part almost every other version of this story skips, and it's the single most important year on the entire timeline.
Here's the thing nobody selling you a tunnel conspiracy video wants to mention. 1907 has almost nothing to do with the Smokies directly. It matters because of what happened 800 miles west in what was then Indian Territory. On November 16, 1907, that territory merged with Oklahoma Territory and entered the United States as the state of Oklahoma. For the wider Cherokee Nation, the larger body of the people forced west during the Trail of Tears 70 years earlier, that single act formally stripped what remained of their recognized self-governing tribal structure. A federal allotment process in the years before statehood had already broken up communal land into individual private parcels. Statehood itself finished erasing what was left of an internationally recognized, self-governing Cherokee national government, which wouldn't be meaningfully reconstituted for decades. By any serious historian's account, it's one of the 2 or 3 most consequential years in the entire post-removal history of the Cherokee people.
So why open a video about North Carolina tunnels with a date about Oklahoma statehood? Because the two halves of the Cherokee Nation, the eastern band who'd stayed in the Smokies and the larger nation forced west, were living through the same federal pressure from two different directions in the same years. In the West, that pressure took the form of a vote in Congress and the legal dismantling of a government. In the East, it took a quieter form. Ethnologists, surveyors, land agents, and eventually curious tourists all showing up across those same decades, asking Cherokee families to hand over stories and sacred sites with very little offered in return, and a track record going back to 1838 of broken promises every previous time it had happened. If you're looking for the actual reason a community might get more careful about what it shares with outsiders right around the turn of the century, you don't need an invented secret. You need that history. By 1907, the Cherokee Nation as a whole had every documented reason to stop extending outsiders the benefit of the doubt about land, about government, and about stories. The refusal was never one dramatic event. It was a pattern repeated for decades, and it was earned.
So let's put this together cleanly, without the Mystery Channel inflation. Documented and verifiable, the Nunnehi tradition exists in writing since 1900, recorded by a federal ethnologist who genuinely lived among the Cherokee. Multiple named individuals, independently, across 3 different decades, reported physical tunnel-like structures on and around Cullowhee Mountain. A real centuries-old Cherokee village site sits beneath part of that same campus today. A real wall was built over part of that tunnel system in 2000. And 1907 really did mark the formal collapse of the Cherokee Nation's recognized government, a hinge point, in hindsight, for an entire era of broken trust between Cherokee communities and outside institutions. Clearly labeled as legend, that the Nunnehi are literally physically present beings currently living under these mountains today. That the tunnels were necessarily built by them rather than being natural karst formations, old root cellars, or mine prospecting holes that the original witnesses simply didn't have the vocabulary to describe precisely. That there was one specific elder in one specific year who dramatically broke a vow of silence. None of that holds up against the actual record, and treating it as literal fact does a disservice to a tradition that was never meant to be read that way to begin with. Today, federal law under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, alongside the Eastern Band's own cultural resource protocols, governs exactly what can be excavated, studied, or disclosed about sites like this one. That's the modern, formal version of the same instinct those elders had 100 years ago. This knowledge belongs to a living nation, not to whoever asks loudest, and not to whoever's willing to put it in a thumbnail. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians isn't a mystery waiting to be solved. It's a sovereign nation of more than 15,000 people, governing the Qualla boundary today, a few miles from every location in this video. The tunnels are real enough to have 5 names attached to them. The tradition behind them is older and far more carefully kept than any single year can explain. And the part of this story that actually deserves your attention isn't a secret revealed in 1907. It's the 100+ years of reasons a community had to be careful with strangers, right up until somebody finally took the time to ask properly.
If you want real, sourced history out of these mountains, instead of the recycled version everyone else is uploading, that's exactly what this channel does. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.